if you want your business to make you actually free, you need to be automating a lot. And there are two ways you can automate things. And one of them is pseudo automating, one of them is using software, and the other one is just by hiring people. But when it comes to automations, the biggest form of automation that you do in the start is automating your emails. And I'm not talking about your daily broadcasts or weekly broadcasts. I'm talking about certain things like welcome sequences, new bar sequences, and stuff like that that set the expectations for people to start purchasing your products, that set the expectations for your products, that help people consume what you have, and basically kind of unify the knowledge that people have on your list. Those are essential if you want for your email marketing to be effective, and those can very easily 10, 15, and the past I've seen is 17x the amount of money you make for every one of your subscribers. So they're very much worth it. But when you start automating them, you can find them very, very confusing. In this video, I'm going to cover how email automations work. It doesn't matter on which platform you are, they all work the exact same way, and I'll explain all the different things and tools you can use to make things happen and make them happen in the exact way that you want them to happen. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jordan Parker. I worked in engineering for 15 years. In the past 5 years, I built a company. It's scaled to 70 people, an IT company, led engineers, and did all kinds of stuff engineering-wise. So I understand this stuff very, very well. My current business is helping creators make their own money, and I'm using all of my technical skills to do so, and all of my business skills. Anyway, newsletter below, sign up. It's amazing. It's called Creator Income. But let's get into the automations. Now, for this explanation, I'm going to use a system called Bento. Bento is a fantastic email marketing solution, and it is very, very powerful, especially for very technical users and for power users, which I am one of. But if you can understand it here, you can understand it anywhere. And I'll make sure that this thing is as clear as possible. And I also have an alternative platform, which is Beehive in this case, in which I'll show the exact same actions and how they map to the different set of buttons that Beehive has. Again, the point is not what buttons do you click. The buttons you'll figure out, they're easy. The point is, why are you clicking those buttons? Once you understand that, then the whole automation journey becomes super easy, and then you can do it pretty much in any platform, no matter what. You can even do it in Zapier, by the way. It's the same thing between automating using no code and automating your emails, but we're focused on emails, so I'll just stick to that in this video. Okay, so first things first. You have two main components of every automation system. The first component is triggers, and the second component are actions. So triggers are something that starts the automation. We need that automation to run. We need that automation to actually do something when something else happens. So in general, you would have automations that can run, for example, once every day, or once every week, or once a subscriber enters your list, or once a subscriber exits your list, or once a subscriber purchases something, and so on and so forth. And basically those triggers allow you to take some event that you would act on anyway and let the system act on this event for you. So, for example, I can say that every time somebody buys something, I should send them a specific email. Or I can say every time somebody buys something, I should add some sort of label to their user, and for me to know that they are a buyer, that they are no longer just this random person. There's somebody who trusted me with their money and not just time, which is amazing. So, triggers can be all kinds of different things, and we'll look at the ones that Bento has, and I'll show you the ones that Beehive has, because the ones on Beehive are more streamlined, but in general you'll find the exact same stuff. So, first of all, when it comes to triggers, we typically have some sort of events that cause things on your website. So events are noteworthy things that happen. Depending on what kind of platform you have, you'll find different events available. So here you'll find in Bento specifically that most triggers kind of end up at being, an event actually happened. But if we just fire that, like any event happening, we can have a lot of, just side effects or just this event triggering when we don't want it to trigger. For example, I can say when something happens at home, turn on the fire sprinklers. That's not a very good trigger because I can trip at home and get, the fire sprinklers trying to put down a fire, which is not genius because I don't need water on my back at this certain moment. I need, maybe my system to call an ambulance or just laugh at me or something, like something specific to the context. So here, what we want to do is we want to filter out the filters, we want to filter out by the type of event that we're firing. So for example, In Bento, we have those this thing called popular events. Let me move my camera. I think I can move it to the bottom. Yes, perfect. Okay, so here you can see that when you're looking at a new custom event, we can actually add a rule for when it should happen. So we'll see those rules in many forms. We can see them as individual blocks. They just shape how your automation works, or we can see them as parts of specific blocks. It doesn't matter. The thing is, we want to filter out information and do something dependent on the filter. And I'll show you a couple of examples for this, because it might sound a little bit daunting, but it isn't really that difficult, and it is exactly the same everywhere, and it is very easy to learn. So here, what we want to do is we want to add a very simple rule. We want to make sure that the event, and here we have a bunch of options, but we use this one, which just gives us a very handy list of events that we might want to use, and we can just use the subscribed event. Because what that means is that whenever somebody subscribes, we'll fire up an event. Like whenever, for example, someone opens the door to your house, you might want to have, a special robot to go out of the ceiling and look at them with a massive gun, and if they're not you or your beloved ones, they immediately got shot down. Like, that might be a bit extreme, but you get the idea. Anyway, so here this is like the door opening. When somebody joins the list, so in this case they fire up a subscribed event, they will trigger everything that comes after. So this is the key. This is what happens when you fire up your car. Then you get to do stuff with your car. So, for example, if you're in your car and you're steering the wheel and changing gears and doing all kinds of stuff, it's not very effective unless the car is fired. Like it's just not going to run. In this case, it's the same thing. We need something to fire the car. With a car, that's always the same thing. It is you do this with your key, and the car starts, or you press a button and your car starts. In here, with software and with email automation, we have more options. We have all the different things that your online store could do or your subscribers could do. So this seems more daunting because there's just so many more options, but in reality, this is just different things that will happen in your business that will make sense when they make sense. So initially, you would mostly care for when somebody subscribes. Then as time passes by, you start selling something, and then you care about when somebody purchases something. Then you can expand to other stuff. Maybe you have a live chat. Maybe you have a live chat for support. Maybe you have a bunch of other stuff that is happening on the website, some sort of special tracking. Maybe you have a magic button that people can press and get an extra email. It doesn't matter. The point is, you will figure those events out as you need them. Initially, the trigger that you are going to use the most is this new subscription trigger, because this is how you make a welcome sequence. So, in this case, this is everything that we need to do. We pick the event and we say when somebody subscribes. All right, so this is a very normal trigger. This is something that you see all the time. Another thing that you might see very often is when somebody gives you money. So in this case, in Bento, we have a way to do this not natively. So we have this new event that is just a Stripe event. So basically, whenever somebody, buys something, you get an event. And here we have other ways so we can figure out what they purchased. I can't speak today. Sorry about that. Anyway, but we have other events here and other filters that allow us to figure out what did they purchase, when did they purchase it, and so on and so forth, so we can actually create the perfect automation for the perfect situation. So, for example, you might have a certain email that goes out to everyone who purchases your course, but you don't want people who are purchasing, your hourly services to get that same automation, because it doesn't make sense. So again, you have to filter them out. So you have to figure out what they're buying, and then compare that to the actual course. If they are buying the course, they get the automation. If they're not buying the course, they don't get the automation. And so on and so forth. It's the same principle everywhere, and this same principle applies again to absolutely every sort of automation that you can imagine. It is really that straightforward. All right. So we have an automation, and I have two of them here. The only difference is that on this one, I added a description which says subscribed, which is just for my general usage of the system. When you, depending on what kind of system you have, you might have different ways you can make the system easier to use. So in this case, I know that this is a custom event, but I don't know which one. So what Bento allows me to do is I can just simply write a description, and this description I can see here, and that can quickly let me navigate through my own stuff, because when you have one automation, it's pretty easy to figure out what's happening, but as your business scales, you would have 2, 3, 5, and very often 30 to 50 automations running, and it becomes very difficult to know what's happening where. So naming your things in a way that is enabling you to figure out what is where quickly, and figuring out what is where quickly in 3 months after you've forgotten 90% of what this automation was about is very, very useful. Cool. So we have our events. They are very, very fancy and actually very simple. And again, I'll show you the same process on Beehive. Here, events that we fire are here in this trigger section. Again, the events trigger the automation, so they're called triggers in the sense of automation, but the triggers itself are different events that can happen. And here you can see that we also have a pretty hefty list of different things that can happen, and based on if a user does one of those things, then you can put them in an automation. And you can see a lot of the options with Beehive, they're much simplified because it is designed for a more beginner audience. But here you see the same set of options. Somebody signed up, somebody gave you their email, somebody submitted a survey or a poll, or referred someone else, or we added them to a segment of people. It is exactly the same stuff. So again, if you want to mimic this perfectly, we simply add a trigger that says signed up, and Beehive has this very annoying habit of asking you to activate every single thing individually, but we can activate that and save it. And there we go, we have a signed up automation here. In this case, in Bento's case, we had to filter out, we had to add a rule for people who actually signed up, because we only have a trigger that says, a new event fired. So we have all events and we filtered them out. Here we have the first filter, it's kind of built into this block already, so we already know that people signed up. But if you want to add conditions, you see the exact same input field. It is the same thing. We can add a condition and we say, hey, if their email is this, or if their tags are that, or if the channel they signed up on is this. So you get all of those different ways you can say when should this specifically run. Again, you have a magical turret that appears and destroys the body of everyone who enters your house who you didn't approve of. So what it will do is you would have an automation for that. Please don't automate this with email marketing software, but you would have an automation, or maybe don't automate this at all, because that's illegal and dangerous and all of that. Do this in a video game, okay? Do it in a video game. I design games for 9 years, so I think like a game designer, a gamer. Anyway, so you would have an automation that would say, hey, let's check if their email is in the allowed list, and if the email is in the allowed list, then they can enter. If it's not, I don't know, the door locks, that a giant cage drops and they are stuck at your threshold forever until you decide to unleash them back in the world or exile them in a different dimension. I don't know, depending on what your style is. Anyway, so we can create conditions for this to run, and if all of those conditions are true, then it will run. Same thing goes in Bento. If we can add rules, again, you can see the naming of different bits and pieces might be slightly different. The whole thing is exactly the same otherwise. So we have the rules here and the conditions here, but you can see everything else is exactly the same. You have a list in which you can add a bunch of conditions, and here we have a list in which we can add a bunch of conditions. A bunch of rules, sorry. And here you can pick, do you want them to be an AND rules or OR rules? And I'll explain those in a second. And here we have, do you want them to be AND rules or OR rules? Exactly the same stuff. Every email marketing platform works the same way. They have to work this way because this is how the code beneath the email marketing platform works. And this is the simplest way they can represent that to other people. Now, let's explain this AND or OR. So in some cases, you want to have a bunch of different conditions that apply for everyone. So you can only enter my house if you're wearing a pink t-shirt and if you have black hair. If you don't have black hair and you're not wearing a pink t-shirt, then you're banned. Like this is, if you want to subscribe to my emails, you have to wear a pink t-shirt and have black hair. This is an AND condition. You need both of those things, and you can only move through if you have both of those things. You can't go in if you only wear a pink t-shirt but you're blonde, and you can't enter if you have black hair but you're wearing a blue t-shirt. It doesn't work this way. You need both of those things. So another example we can make is if we're looking for the 8 of spades, we want this card to be the 8 and we want the suit to be the spades. Otherwise, it's not the 8 of spades. It's an AND condition. Okay? Next, we have the OR conditions. or conditions, again, they work exactly the same way. They can be called rules or conditions. It frankly doesn't matter at all. But the difference is that if we have an or condition, we can have several criteria that are all perfectly fine. For example, I can allow blonde people, I can allow gingers, and I can allow dark-haired people. It's all of them are welcome. Everyone is cool, everyone is accepted, and everyone can make fun of the gingers for being the hottest. For example, I just saw Harry Potter. I love the Weasley brothers. Anyway, so or conditions give you an option. So I can say that you can. Again, with the deck of cards example, we want a black card or a 10. All right, so we have those examples, and if we get the 9 of hearts, this is not a black card and not a 10, so it doesn't work. We have a black card, the 8, it's not a 10, but it's a black card, so it's fine. We have a 10 and a black card, so it is both of those things. It's also fine, of course. We have a 10 that's not a black card. This is a red 10. Perfectly fine. And we have a 2, but it's a black card, so it's fine as well. So we have a bunch of different options for how people can be allowed to do this thing. In a more practical sense, when we do this, so for example, you can have a bunch of different sign-up fields on your website, and you want 8 of your sign-up fields, but not all of them, to lead people to your welcome sequence, and one of them to lead to a contact form, a new lead sequence or something like this. So I sign up through most of your website fields. So you have if they sign up from the main homepage, if they sign up from the footer, if they sign up from the top bar, if they sign up from my pop-up, if they sign up from all of those different places, they get the welcome sequence. But if they sign up from the contact us form, this is not here. This is not in the list of different rules. And because of that, the contact us form people do not get the welcome sequence. They get a completely different thing, or they don't get anything. So this allows you very granular control over things. Now, there is a lot to be said. This is called Boolean Logic, by the way. There is a lot to be said here, and it is something that is initially challenging for people. Believe me, I told a bunch of people how to be engineers. They start learning this very early on. This can be a little bit daunting. The best thing that you can do, and the easiest thing you can do, is you can take this, you can explain to ChatGPT, hey, what the hell do I exactly need with your words, and ask it what kind of conditions should I make. And at most, the hardest thing you have to do is you need to screenshot the different options you have, and then send them again, and you will be able to get an answer. And ChatGPT can make those filters. It is actually very good at this stuff, so you don't really need to learn this in super big amount of depth. But I don't think it's that difficult anyway. So if you learn and understand it, that can make you an even better person to automate your stuff. And the more you understand how your business works, the more flexible you are, because you can actually change things or hire people to change things for you and be very effective about it. Cool. Those are triggers. Those are the complicated part of this. And by the way, the complicated part is something that you will usually use this one, which is signed up, and maybe you have like one condition in here which says, I don't know, where was it from here? Referring URL, embed source, and then it would be some sort of a form here that you have. On this account, there are no forms created, so you won't see any of them, but that would be it. Like, this is going to be pretty much the only filter you need, and to figure out how to do it exactly, you will look for a tutorial for your specific platform. This is not the point of this video. In any case, this part is factually the hardest, but it's also going to be kind of easy on you because you won't be using it that much. All right, so let's look at actions, because we have a bunch of actions here, and here there are so many of them that they're broken down into several categories and all of that. So you can see that here we have the actions site, and we have a bunch of them. Here we have update, and we have a bunch more actions. We have delays as actions, we have splits as actions, we have notes as actions. Notes are the only one that we won't cover in detail, but what they actually do is they allow you to just type stuff down for yourself. So this is new welcome sequence. This is useful for you, basically. The reason those exist is because when you make this and 3 months pass, as I mentioned, you'll forget everything about it. And when you have this, it's easier to figure out what's going on. And if you did something very, very stupid or very lazy, you can put a note for future use, so future you can fix it. But yeah, this section is not interesting, but all of the other ones can be useful, and they can be very very noteworthy. Again, you explore those as you need them. You don't need to learn all of those and master them for you to be able to make automations effectively. You'll need 3 or 4 actions, which I'm going to show you right now. All right, so we have the send email, the send sequence. We can also have the remove from sequence actions, but we won't get into this one. It does the opposite of add to sequence. Webhooks we won't get into. That's a little bit too complicated. We can have unsubscribe. This can be useful. We have add and remove tag. Those are always useful. And we have a delay. Those are the ones that we care about the most. We have also those things which are called splits, loops, and all kinds of logical flow to the form. This is useful for when you have bigger things, when you have a much bigger automation. They're exceptionally useful, and they allow you to use those conditions that we... wait, this is the email. Wait a second. They allow you to use those conditions that we put here. Those are rules. Or they allow you to use those conditions that we saw here, which here they're called conditions. So they allow you to use those outside of a single block. They allow you to control the whole flow of things, so that you can basically have the whole thing branch out. But before we get to that, and I'll show it very briefly, but before we get to that, let's look at the main actions that you have. So the first normal action that you have is send an email. So somebody signs up and you send them an email. For some reason, I cannot move those right now. Let me try refreshing the page. Oh, it deleted everything. Amazing. I forgot to save. Very important thing. If you want to do stuff, you need to save it. Save your stuff. Anyway, it's not relevant because I already know what I want to put here. Okay, so we have this send email action. So the send email action does exactly what you think it's going to do. It allows you to create an email and it's going to send the email. Now, the important thing is that your trigger needs to be connected to your action. Not every automation software does this automatically. For example, Bento doesn't do this because it is more flexible. It allows you to do very interesting things. But because of that, we need to take this exit point. So whenever this event happens, it exits and then it needs to enter something else. So we create this awesome line, and we even have this text here which allows us to understand what happens. So we run this event, and when this event happens, we run this action after it. So in this case, whenever somebody subscribes, they'll get an email. Simple stuff, nothing super fancy here. So whenever somebody subscribes, we can type the name of the email, we can look at the stats, we can create the email, we can do all kinds of things that you would expect to be able to do with an email. Very, very normal stuff. Nothing super fancy here, and I won't get into this specific node here in detail because you frankly don't care. Like, it doesn't matter how you're setting up the email. What's important is you can send an email in result to somebody subscribing. And where you'll see that is somebody subscribes and you send them an email saying, hey, can you confirm your email? Or somebody subscribes and you send them a welcome email. Very standard stuff. Or somebody buys a different type of trigger and you send them a, hey, here's your thing email. All very standard stuff that you've seen many, many times. Cool. Next, the other thing that is going to be useful, not every platform has this, but I find this very, very clean, because sometimes you want to move your emails outside of your automations. Bento does this, platforms like Kit do this, and Beehive specifically doesn't do this, so I can't show it here. But what that does, what this specific action does, is when we add somebody to a sequence, the emails there are already configured and people will receive those emails in a specific order. That's it. So we have an email, they get the email, there's some sort of delay, and then they get the next email. And there's some sort of delay, and they get the next email, and so on and so forth. So this is a way you can do the very common thing that you see in welcome sequences, which is going to look something like this. So we have a send an email, and we have the other action, which is the delay action. And you basically will have both of those repeating a bunch of times. So a welcome sequence, if we think about it, is somebody subscribes and they get the welcome email. After that, we want them to get the second email of the sequence. The issue with them getting the second email of the sequence is if they get the first email and they immediately get the next email, it's gonna be a little bit weird, because I join and suddenly, like, I take 15 minutes to open up my inbox and suddenly I get 11 different emails, which is your entire welcome sequence. That wouldn't be perfect. So what we do is we delay the second email by a little bit. Let us delete this link here. Come on. Yes, perfect. So we want to delay the second email by a little bit. Usually that's a day. All right, so what we want to say, we want to count 1 day, and this is going to be the delay. So we send an email, we wait for an entire day, and then we send the next email. Very simple stuff. And if you repeat this pattern enough times, you would get a very normal sequence. A sequence is an email, some delay, another email, some delay, a third email, fourth email, whatever. And this is something that is just a simplification. Email sequences are just a simplification of this flow. In Beehive, the way you do email sequences is you send an email, then you do time delay. You can see that they're very similar again. And then you send another email, and then you do time delay, and so on and so forth. That's it. Nothing fancy here, nothing special. And you can see how more beginner friendly this is, because it is designed to give you only the the 5-6 things that you will need as a beginner. This is very cool when you're a beginner because it simplifies your life, but it is not great when you're advanced because it means you can do less stuff. In any case, when we open this, we can see we can create an email, and that's it. When you open the delay, we see we can configure how long the delay is. Do we want minutes, hours, days, and I can say 1 day. And again, in Beehive, we have to enable everything for some, I'm not sure why, but we have to do it. And that's it. And we have send an email, wait a little bit, send an email, wait a little bit, and so on and so forth. This is how you send a welcome sequence, or how you send any sort of a sequence using an automation. Very straightforward, very simple stuff. This is the same stuff, but in Bento, you can actually configure the sequences outside of the automation editor, which can make your life easy. So if you actually decide to do that, what you will do is, instead of doing those emails and waiting around here, you can just add them to the sequence, and the sequence will handle the rest. Some platforms do this, but it's absolutely irrelevant. It is perfectly fine. Let's add the sequence, and that's it. Cool. So we can add them to a sequence, and for example, if I wanted to add them to my welcome sequence, I will do this, and then my welcome sequence, I have to configure that externally. But that's everything you need to do to add people to a sequence. The third thing that you want to do, which is the most common thing in terms of filtering your audience, is tagging your audience. So when it comes to tagging your audience, you would have an add tag action, and on Beehive, they don't really have an add tag action, but they do have that support. They do support that. But on Beehive, it's called update subscription. So that allows you to upgrade the subscribers' data that you have, including their tags. So here you can see that one of the options is we can add some of their tags, so we can change their tags in some way or form. So here we can add a tag, and once they're tagged with this, we can then filter by those type of subscribers and so on. So for example, here we can create a, I don't know, what tags do I have? We can add a new user tag, and then based on this tag, we can do certain things. So for example, we can know that this person is a new user, we can do certain things about them, and we can filter and create rules around the tags they have. So for example, here in my welcome sequence, I can already check if they are already getting the welcome sequence, and if they are, I shouldn't send it again. If they aren't getting the welcome sequence, I can add people to that welcome sequence, and that makes life a little bit easier. So yeah, and of course, when you add tags, you can also remove tags. One of the most common things that you will see is whenever we have some sort of a welcome sequence, we will add a tag that says they're in the welcome sequence, and then when the welcome sequence finishes, we'll remove that tag, so we know that this person exited the welcome sequence, and you can email them normally. And while people have this normal tag, like this tag in the welcome sequence, then you won't email them your broadcasts, because you want them to get onboarded before you start sending them your regular messages. So this basically covers the majority of what you will do with automations for 90% of the time. The only thing that I want to show is those logical things. I'll show only the split, because the split is the most common thing. But basically here, we again have those conditions. Those are very much the same as the ones that we saw earlier, but here we can actually do something different. In here, in this custom event, so in the trigger, whenever somebody subscribes, and if they were like, only if they were from the subscription event, only then we run the actual flow. Only then we run the automation, only then something happens. This isn't like that. This allows you to say what happens if people actually meet the criteria, and what people do when they don't meet the criteria. So it allows you to branch out. So you basically give people two doors. Door number one is you subscribe to my opt-in form. Door number two is you subscribe to my contact us page. Both doors work, both those read to a different corridor, but they are not the same corridor. In this case, we have one corridor. If you fall into this category, if those rules are true, you get into the automation. Otherwise, you don't get into the automation. Here we have both of those options. So let me create a very, made up scenario, because it's not something that you see really. But first of all, we need to connect everything. All of your automations need to be connected. Some platforms like Beehive automatically connect everything, but not all platforms. Those manual connections allow you more flexibility, because, for example, on Beehive, we can't move those around the actual, this actual area for work is very limited and very tight in terms of working space. You can't organize it, you can't add nodes. There's a lot of limitations here. But the connections are added automatically for you, which simplifies things and takes away some of your freedom. Here, we don't have a lot of that happening, so you need to do things manually in Bento, but at the same time, you have a lot more freedom to do whatever you need. So, we have a new subscriber. Then we want to check whether or not they have a tag. If they have a tag, no, this is the tag added event. Let's see, details, contains, it's fields, contains, unique events, cart items, details, popular events, subscribe, tag added, send message. Okay, so let's use fields, contains, I don't know, a new user, and then we'll say just new user is set to 1, whatever. And if, what did I do? I added it to the wrong spot. Anyway, so let's see, tags contains, if they contain this $13,000 funnel, $13,000 funnel is the name of the course. My first money that I made online was, I made 13,000 in about 10 days. And I documented this process, and then I expanded it over years, and that made my final course. And if somebody already owns this course, I want to send them a special email. So I want to, for example, I might send them a special offer. So if they have the course, they will go through this chain, which is a true chain. So here we say, I'll just name it so it's clear, but that would be check if they have my course. So if they have, I am clicking the wrong stuff because it's Saturday and I'm sleepy for some reason. I need my afternoon nap, otherwise I'm less than useful. Anyway, so we check if they have my course. So if they have my course, they will have a tag that says, the name of the course. And if they do have that, we'll send them an email with a special offer, for example. Let's say special offer, you are cool, whatever. And if they don't have my course, I don't want to be super pressury and all of that, I might send them an email that just says, welcome. Because you need to understand your relationship with the people on your list. Depending on where this relationship is, you want to behave in a different way. When you talk to a friend of yours from high school, you behave in one way. When you talk to somebody that you just met at work, you behave in a different way. So you want to understand this specific relationship that you have with every reader and create the specific situation for them. This split in programming, this is called an if statement, is very, very useful because it allows you to, split the different paths that people can take. You give them 2 different doors, and basically, depending on some condition, they can exit through one door or another. Here we'll do another one, and I'll show you the same thing here. This is called a true-false branch here. Again, the names are always going to be different in different platforms. Everyone names them differently. Everyone takes a different thing from programming and uses it to make it simpler. And when there is 0 ways you can find consistency between platforms, it becomes very confusing, but it is what it is. So here we need to do the same thing. So we need to check them. Here the tags are a custom field. Or actually, I think we have subscriber tags, so they would have some sort of a tag here. And if they have this specific tag, they will go to, come on, I can't select it. Let me just select this one, whatever. All right. So if they have this specific tag, they'll go to this branch, and if they have the other, if they don't have it, they'll go to that branch. So you can create two mini automations, so to speak, for people who have this tag and for people who don't have this tag. Again, here I can check if they have my course. I can check whether or not they do something. They did something in the past that wants me to treat them a little bit differently. Maybe I can have a different sort of welcome email depending on whether or not they were before that on the list. So, for example, if I don't know, they join through a page that offers them some sort of a checklist. If they were already on my list, I can just send them the checklist and let that be it. And if they're not already on my list, I can add them to a welcome sequence, and so on and so forth. So this allows you to customize the journey for every specific person. Again, I will summarize everything so it is as simple as we can make it. You will understand this once you play around with this. So basically create an automation and run through it a couple of times. Just submit your email on your own website and see what happens. It's not that difficult, but you will probably need to play with this for 10-15 minutes to actually understand it perfectly. But I'll summarize everything. First of all, we have triggers. Triggers are when an automation starts. Those triggers, most often than not, would be people signing up to your list. And you will have a different interface for them, but you would have, some sort of a condition that says, people did something meaningful. So, for example, in this case, people subscribe to your list. This is meaningful. This is important. This is a milestone moment for your relationship with the subscriber. So we want to do something about it. Here, same thing. You have a trigger. You can have multiple ones, and you basically pick the trigger that you want. Doesn't matter. You have events that are happening, and you can make one of those events a trigger for something else. So, for example, somebody opens your door, something happens. You press a button on your remote, the TV changes channels, and so on. So the event is you pressing the button on the remote, but that triggers the TV changing channels. Next, we have stuff that happens after that, and we can send emails, add people to sequences, tag them in some way, organize our work in many different ways, and we have those in all kinds of shapes and flavors. Again, it doesn't really matter what the interface says. If you go through those and just explore them on whichever platform, you figure them out. There's like 15 things that those platforms usually do. There are not that many, and you probably need emails and tags. Those are the two main ones that you'll use 90% of the time. And and delays, sorry. Emails, tags, and delays. Those are the three things that you generally use 99% of the time. Send email, add a tag, remove a tag, wait. That's it. And if you imagine if you had a magical, genius and assistant, this is what you'll say. Like, first of all, send them my first email, then wait for 24 hours, and then send them my next email. Same thing, but you're telling this to a computer. And finally, for the highest level of beginner stuff, but the lowest level of advanced stuff, we have different ways we can add some logic to this and create a more sophisticated flow that caters to people's needs individually. In this case, we have a split action. On Beehive, it's called a true or false branch. It can be an if branch, it can be a conditional branch, it can be a bunch of other names, but fundamentally what you'll see after you make one of those is that your path splits in two. If your path splits into you probably have one of those. And in this case, like the name is different, but it's always the same thing. It is, you have a path that splits in two, and you have some sort of a condition. If the condition is met, people go to door A, and if the condition isn't met, they go through door B. And using all of those, you can create any sort of automation you want. You can get, very sophisticated things happening, or you can just have a couple of sequences that fire up on the appropriate time. So when somebody purchases something, or when somebody joins your list. And yeah, this is everything you need to know to be able to automate things yourself. Again, you won't be able to do it by just watching a stupid video. You won't get it because there's just a ton of new and different concepts here. But if you watch the video, if you spend 2 hours playing with this thing, believe me, it's not that hard. Just spend 2 hours, and worst case, you watch the video again and spend another 2 hours, you will already be, and that's like, it's a pretty long video, so let's say you invest all of this time, but you're like 5 hours in, and you're already pretty damn good at automations, and you can make pretty much anything you can think of. And if you're confused on how you can structure this, again, you can use AI to help you with the structure. It is very, very simple to use AI to help you with the architecture of the whole thing, or just simply drag and drop the whole thing into place so it works. So don't be scared by this stuff. It is not difficult. Just go through it, be a little bit patient and just use this video as a reference. And also there will be a bunch more videos on many different channels that explain those things in more detail. And if you want me to cover any one of the specific channels that you might want to use, send me a comment below and I'll just try to cover everything that I can. Anyway, join Creator Income. It's my newsletter. I teach you how to make money online. It's pretty cool. And yeah, bye.